and I need to share my screen with you. All right. Okay, so as I already said, my name is Megan Weldon. I'm giving you the Rapido monthly March release in place of Judith, who could not be here today. I'm sorry, that's her name. I'm not sure how to change it. I'm on her WebEx account to make sure that we didn't miss anybody who registered for today. Okay. Our session this morning, or this afternoon, we'll look as usual. First, we'll visit the topics of the Rapido community, then move to cover the Rapido March release, and we'll finish up with Rapido frequently asked questions, followed by any questions that you share in the chat with me today. So first off, acknowledging our Rapido community continues to grow, and this month we saw 3 libraries go live. So welcome to those new partners in our Rapido community. Looking at our March release highlights, you'll see that this month they're all related to your staff workflows and fall under our theme of a staff-centric pillar of Rapido. First, we'll acknowledge the part where it affects most your borrowing. In your borrowing mediation rules, you'll now find the capacity for a cancel request action. So the borrowing mediation rules, you get there through your configuration menu, following resource sharing, Rapido rules, borrowing mediation rules, and then you can create or edit a mediation rule. These mediation rules now include the capacity to cancel a request automatically, which how it will work for you is when this action is applied to a rule, this rule will cancel the request by updating the status of the request to canceled by staff. Your end user, your patron borrower, will receive the request cancel letter, and that letter will contain the cancellation reason and the cancellation note that you specify here in the rule. So for example, in this screenshot here, your end user's cancellation reason would be duplicate request. So this rule is working as written to automatically cancel requests for a duplicate of something that your patron has already submitted a request for. Thinking a little bit more about this rule, another example could be perhaps canceling the request for a certain user group when that request gets to a certain pod. So maybe you want to allow a certain user group, say your community users, your visitor users, etc., to be able to access your first pod, but perhaps you don't want them to be able to utilize your partners at your broader or farther away pods. So then you can use that cancellation reason that cancel request action, fill out the cancellation reason in your mediation rule and your cancellation note, and that information will go into that cancel request letter sent to your end user patron. While we're thinking about mediation rules, if it's been a while since you've looked at mediation rules, or even if you're new to doing so, we've got a lot of documentation on mediation rules. Here's a list of various parameters that are available to you for using on mediation rules. And we have a training video available for you to familiarize yourself. Walking through and working through mediation rules at your library is also something we can do in our one-on-ones in our customer success meetings. So if we don't have a meeting scheduled and you want to talk about mediation rules or other aspects of Rapido, let me know and we can connect about that. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scroll so far ahead. Let me go back. I know this is visually a little jarring here. Okay, so mediation rules, we finished up there. Our next March release item is relevant to your lending workflows. So in your lending workflows, you fulfill requests for physical items as well as digital requests. Your digital workflows in March will see an improvement. So from the download electronic resource action in your digital requests, that action kind of opens up a screen that will look like this here, where you've got all of your request details there, volume, issue, etc. And then it will have your holdings from where you can go to download it. And now you have the ship item digitally action right there in that screen. So having all three of these pieces together should support your workflows being more streamlined and simple, less jumping between pages, less clicking back and forth. Hopefully this makes it easier and faster for you to fulfill the request, so you spend less time filling requests for digital items, and that also helps your borrowing partners get their materials faster. So again, this is for fulfilling digital requests in your lending workflows using the download electronic resource action. That screen will start looking different for you with the March release, having all three kind of essential items that you need visible in one view with a lot less clicks here. Okay, moving forward, something else related to your lending workflows is you'll find now with the March release that titles with physical holdings and have more information available to you. Under the holdings section in the right-hand pane, you'll be able to see the name, the shelving location, call number, and availability of those items. So if that's information that's of interest or relevant to you, prior to, well, really at any point in your workflow, it's now there visible to you. You don't have to go elsewhere to look that up. Something that might be of use for you alongside this new capacity is in the sort by functionality on your screen. You can sort by shelving location. I just think that's something that might be useful for you as you navigate this or work with this new capacity in Rapido. So here in our example, you can see that something is held in the main library in the juvenile education collection, one of one available, and where it has a call number, it's provided there. So that will be new for you in the March release for your lending workflows. Something else that's coming in the March release is that format of the request information is just a bit better of a view than it was previously. And this was to better support non-English languages to offer a smoother experience. So that right-hand view was enhanced with the March release. Okay, and for the March release, we also have edits and additions to our Rapido letters. So in our customer success conversations, those meetings I have with each of you and your libraries, we've gotten a lot of feedback about Rapido letters. We took that feedback about Rapido letters from you, and we met with the Rapido working groups. So thank you to both of the Rapido working groups for your consideration and time spent on identifying the specific needs regarding letters for the Rapido community. Letters used in the Rapido workflows, specifically letters printed or used as printouts in your Rapido workflows, which are listed here, will now have more fields available to them, and you can customize these letters further to include these fields so that these letters are more useful in your workflows. For example, pod information is used by some to dictate what type of delivery method is used. You'll now be able to print that information on the various letters. Other libraries reported that they were having to print multiple slips to fulfill one workflow simply because one aspect of the information was available in one letter and the other letter had the other pieces they needed. Now with this March release, you should be able to merge those workflows into one letter as those fields are more available. So here we have listed the various letters that you may be using as printed items in your Rapido workflows. Then going over here, we have the actual fields that were added to the different letters. Some of them existed in some letters, but not all. So you'll see them based on what was the feedback from our Rapido working groups. These fields have been added to be available to the letters. So going down, I think they're all pretty self-explanatory. Borrowing institution, renewals allowed. Group qualifier, perhaps that might be one that's unfamiliar. Group qualifier is your external ID, but minus that punctuation, because sometimes that punctuation in your external identifier number, we've heard from libraries, is not a scannable makes it not a scannable value, or their scanners don't like that. So the group qualifier is now available for your use. As well as borrowing library address information, partner code, Rapido pod, and library location for institutions with multiple libraries. Thinking about Rapido letters, I think we always need to think about documentation too, so that we can be supported in using our Rapido letters and making edits. Something for you to note is though these fields are now added and available to letters, they weren't added into the default version of the letters because we didn't want to create changes for libraries that are already using those default letters. So if you want to use these fields in your letters, you'll need to add these fields into your letter templates so that those fields are then available in your printed versions of those letters. So you can see the pathway here of how to find Rapido letters documentation. It's going to be housed under from the home Rapido product documentation and configuration, and you can pop down to Rapido letters. Within our documentation, you'll see a link for letter documentation for adding new fields, which takes you to a Word document where we've created a table that shows you the field, what that looks like, the field name, what that looks like in XML, the code that you'll actually need to add to the letter in order to get that field into your letter, and then bulleted which letters that field can actually be added to, which letters that's now will now accept that field. So hopefully that table helps you as you explore utilizing more of those fields in your letters so that those letters can better meet your needs in your day-to-day workflows for your printed paperwork involved in your Rapido workflows. So that was it for our main enhancements for our March release. A lot of things that are really helpful for your staff day-to-day hands-on workflows. Something I also wanted to acknowledge for the March release were a couple of various issues that were resolved. I know there were some pain points for libraries, so I just want to make sure it doesn't get missed by those libraries. So something to note is that previously in a borrowing mediation rule, when you were using the requester as an input parameter, it had an assortment of operators that could be used. However, those operators didn't actually function in that mediation rule. So now when you're utilizing the requester input parameter in a borrowing mediation rule, your options are limited to utilizing the equal operator as a successful mediation of that rule with that parameter relies on this operator. So now you won't be able to accidentally create mediation rules that don't work for you. So that's something if you're using that request or input parameter in any of your mediation rules, something to consider if you want to go look at that, or if you were finding that it wasn't working for you, you shouldn't be able to incorrectly make those mediation rules any longer. Something else that has come out with the March release as a fix is for libraries using Iliad, borrowing requests sent to Iliad from Rapido or receiving the document type field as the book chapter rather than the document type field as book. So this is fixed. That should streamline your processes. If you're a library who's using both of those systems, as the correct information is now coming through for you to keep fulfilling those requests. These other items are related to Salesforce cases. And so you will know if it was your libraries with those Salesforce case numbers. You will also have been updated about these items of resolution. But this next item, for some libraries, when staff were using the fill locally action on digital requests to fulfill items for their local patrons from their own collections, their end users were, instead of being able to download the file, they were getting an error has occurred message. With our March release, this will now work correctly, so staff can utilize the fill locally action for the digital requests, and their end users will be able to receive that content from their library without getting that error message. One other fix that came through with the March release is that libraries were previously, prior to the March release fixes, the libraries received digital requests for items that were out on load and not available. We shouldn't see that going forward after the March release. So I just wanted to touch on the resolved issues because I know there were some pain points for some of our libraries, and I didn't want you to miss those things if they were holdups for you. Okay, that is all for our March release, and now I want to acknowledge a couple of our frequently asked questions from the last month. So here's some information for you. So we've had questions about how do I find patron information within my request, and I don't know when this came out, but I don't think it was ever acknowledged. But from within your request, whether it's in that narrow uh, list type of view that you see there on that request, or whether you have the request open and you have the right hand pane open for that request, selecting on the requester name there, that kind of white text with the black circle around it, that selection will open this window for you, which has your patron's name, identifier, and whatever information is there about about them in their patron record, so that they're for your use in looking at your patron information. Our next frequently asked question I thought was an interesting one. I'd been asked by a library, how do I perform an action to multiple requests at once? Perhaps you have a really defined or clear set, and you're doing the same thing to all of the requests in one set. Maybe you have a lot of things that you need to cancel at once, whatever the scenario is. So you have your requests in a list there. You can either select the checkbox next to each of those requests, or above those requests, you can select that box above that will select all of the rows. Then over to the right, you see that actions box that we've highlighted it with a blue square. You can go to that actions box. From there, you have the options to change status, remove requests, and manage labels. So in this screenshot example here, these requests are all selected, and I'm going to apply the same label to all of the requests because I've reviewed them. So maybe this reviewed label moves my requests on from a mediation rule, or maybe I just like it for my record keeping, whatnot. I can do that all at once with this action. Another example of this might be perhaps you have a bunch of your requests. If you're on the borrowing side of things, maybe you need that from your borrowers that you need to request or cancel all at once. You could do the change status and mark it to canceled by staff. Your end user would then get a notice. Whatever your scenario is, it can be helpful to know that you can work on multiple requests at once if you're performing the same action to all of those requests. So that is our frequently asked questions for the month. So thank you for joining for the March release. I see that it's Judith's email in our slides here. So I'm going to stop sharing and navigate back to where I can get to the chat, and I'll put my email address in there so that you can connect with me if you have any questions after our time today. And then I'll be looking to see if you have any questions to share before we part ways today. Okay, and I see a question about the workflow related to the download digital resources for the lending requests. Your download will still come down as a PDF in a separate, I don't know what you call it, the words are escaping me right now. How you normally select the PDF and it downloads down at the bottom of your screen, that download will still be there. It won't be embedded between all of that text or anything like that. So you can navigate through your holdings, download the file, grab the file, and drop it all in that one view. I hope that answers your question, Peta. Are there any other questions from today's webinar or anything else you want to talk about as we've got some time? I'll here for a few moments to wait for questions in case you're typing away, and then I'll, if I don't see anything come in, we'll go our separate ways so that you can enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, but I'll hang out for a few more minutes to see if anything comes through. Also, please feel encouraged to email me if you have any questions or thoughts that you want to discuss together, or if it's been a while since since I've met with your library, I'd be happy to meet to check in and see how things are going at your library. Oh, I see a question. In the patron information view, can the library add or edit the sections? No, that is not an editing screen. It's just information that's being pulled from the library account, or the patron's account. So I see a question about, is it possible to change what fields are displayed on that preview screen? I'm not quite sure what is meant by that preview screen, but from the next sentence, for example, a patron's address would be really useful. The context I'm understanding then is, again, relating to the patron information view being there. And yes, actually, the fields that show automatically already are name, primary identifier, home address, office address, email, and phone. But due to me not having filled out my address in this for my patron record in this testing environment that I was using for screenshots, then my address doesn't actually show, but that address already is there, so it could be used already with the current fields that are visible. I hope that answers the question. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So if I missed your question, I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with this WebEx environment. I think I've seen them all though, but if I've missed them or you come up with other questions, please email me and I'm happy to discuss further beyond this webinar space. Like I said, I'm not seeing anything else or anything new coming into our chat space. So I'm going to end our webinar. The recording will be posted and the March release notes are already available on our Rapido website. So if you want that this information in that format, it's already available for you. So take care, everyone. Thank you.